Hello YouTube. So I wanted to talk today about some more names of places. This was of course to do with some of the research I was doing for my book. A little bit more than just a simple Google search. I sort of followed a few little paths, if you like, to find and verify certain things and sort of look at ranges of what was possible. So one issue that I came across, and I think I've gone over this, is that some places have some quite amusing names for things. Now, one of these things is Norway. Now, actually, so Norway, fairly obviously, just means Northway. North, way. Pretty easy one there. But the other countries in the area have quite funny names. So Finland, in the native Finnish, means land. No, it's just such a stupid, well, I mean, they probably don't think it's stupid, but to me it seems like a really dumb name. You know, not Finland sounds reasonable, but land, not so much. But in German it means find land, which is still pretty bad. So I was like, oh, what's the name of your country? We're finding land. Let's find some land. I mean, really? Sweden means sea land. And then the other one in Scandinavia, if you like, is Denmark. And Denmark, this is according to their official records, it means Dan's land. They might think Mark's not land, but essentially it means land in that context. And so Dan, and I was going, well, okay, so who's Dan? Don't know. It's been assumed that it was a name of a king. And the Danes, of course, as they call themselves, are named after Dan. Not Daniel, not Dane, but Dan. And essentially, from what I can tell, they just made it up. They invented this Dan fellow, essentially just so they wouldn't have such boring names as Northland, Sealand, and Landland. So they just made one up. And I just found this really quite hilarious. And when you talk about names of countries, some places just haven't gone to a lot of effort. I mean, I'm here in Australia. Australia means Southland. That's literally what Australia means, which is obviously the opposite of Northland. So Norway and Australia are exact opposites. And a couple of other ones that are interesting is most people know that Japan, or actually Nippon, is what they have in their own language, or Nihon, sort of depends. That means land of the rising sun. But what not everyone knows is that Spain means land of the setting sun. So it rises in Japan, sets in Spain. And people don't generally talk about that you know, Japan and Spain are linked, or Australia and Norway are linked. And also, you know how Sweden, I just said, is Sealand. There is another place called New Zealand. Now, that's a bit more obviously meaning New Zealand, but that's actually related to a different place, officially at least, called Zeeland, which I'm trying to think, I think it's a part of the Netherlands. And of course the Netherlands means the lowlands, or the low countries, if you like. Just basically means a bunch of countries that were below sea level. And those countries used to include Switzerland and Germany. Now, it had a different name then, but the meaning is the same. And Netherlands kept that name, whilst Germany means fatherland, and Switzerland, I did write this down, what that meant. But anyway, there's obviously a land there, and land of the Switzers. And what were the Switzers? Look, I'm not near where I wrote my notes. But anyway, so they're all very interesting. And one other thing that I found interesting was that the name of the general area around Norway, Sweden, Finland and Denmark, we probably know, is Scandinavia. Now, what not everyone knows, I think that was an actual kid, not a ghost, but what not everyone knows is that Scandinavia is based on Scania. And now Scania is in turn based on an epic poem about a man called Beowulf. And now there's been a movie made about Beowulf. So Beowulf, in spite of the name, was not a werewolf, he was just a man. And he was somewhere around that general area in Europe, and he fought a golden dragon. The dragon didn't have a name. Not all dragons have names. This one didn't get a name, and he died. But then one of his friends killed the dragon. So I spoiled it. Sorry about that. But basically, after that, in hell, that just looked very creepy there. Boy across the road going out there. You know, sometimes my neighbours are a bit rude. But anyway, so basically, as part of the poem, or after the poem became popular. Anyway, so I just had some neighbour issues there. So the issue is that Scandinavia, based on the Beowulf poem, Scania, which Scandinavia is based on, literally means beware or danger. But it doesn't actually just mean that. It means beware brackets dragons, danger brackets dragon, or beware of dragons. Or as some people say, there be dragons. Now that's sort of, perhaps they thought that was interesting. Perhaps they thought, as I'm sure many other countries have thought, we're the only place that has ever imagined dragons before. And of course that's not true. We have dragons in literally every part of the world. Which in itself lends itself to a lot of speculation that dragons are real, or were real at the very least. Whether they're still around or not, most people would say they're probably not around anymore. But they may have been around. I mean, how could it exist all around the world? The only rational explanation that's been given has been that, other than that dragons were real, is that ancient people looked at the dinosaur bones and went, oh, they're dragons. And of course dinosaurs existed all around the world, so therefore people have misinterpreted that. But that doesn't really hold weight, because if you look at how dragons were said to look, they're unlike any dinosaurs that have ever existed. So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Another thing specifically to Scania or Scandinavia, or that area, is that if you look at a map of it, it literally looks like a foot, like a bird's foot, or possibly like a dragon's foot. You've got the 3 claws, which are Norway, Sweden and Finland, and then you've got the back claw, so the thumb if you like, which is Denmark. That's literally the dragon's claw, or the dragon's foot. And there was a story which I've completely lost, haven't been able to find it, but which said that when the great dragon, a dragon that was bigger than the earth itself, when it left that imprint on Scania or Scandinavia. Now they usually don't like to refer to themselves as Scandinavia. It's only occasionally, and just so that we've got a group name. Usually they refer to themselves as the North. And there's a misconception that Vikings represented them, but Vikings actually was just an occupation. So the Norwegians, or the Norse, or the Nord, or the Nordics, which all mean north, that they had an occupation of Viking, which essentially was a thief or a marauder, or somebody who went to another land and stole from them. So a raider, perhaps, is a good word. And so none of that is anything different to North or the land of the dragons. And you're going to ask people, you say, well, where do dragons come from? And a lot of them will say, from China. China's never been known as the land of the dragons, or anything like it. They do have a star sign. So China doesn't mean land of dragons. And they do have a star sign that means it's the dragon. Again, evidence that they thought that it was literally real, because they've got other star signs like tiger, like pig, like rat, they're all real, but then they've got a dragon. Or they have one that's made up and all the rest are real. It just seems silly. But anyway, but China means central, roughly speaking. I'm doing a bit of a rough translation there, but so the land of the dragons is Norway, or Norway, Sweden, Finland and Denmark, the Scandinavia. But there's also an interesting point was that up until the Great Flood, that area was under ice. So that's quite a strange thought, isn't it? Why would it be under ice if dragons didn't even exist? Or sorry, they stopped existing well before before the Great Flood. And we know that because there's no mention of them anywhere. Or occasionally a little bit, but for the most part they're mentioned from before the Great Flood. And so it's quite an interesting thing. If that's the land of the dragons, why was it frozen? And perhaps it wasn't frozen. Perhaps the dragons live there, keeping it all nice and warm with their fire. And no humans live there because they'd eat and kill them. Anyway, there's a bit of speculation there, and had a bit of fun with that a little bit as well. But one thing that I thought was really, really fun was the name of Israel. And guess what that means? Well, I'm just going to tell you, that means Sarah's land. You know how I said Denmark means Dan's land, basically? Israel means Sarah's land. Now they've since said, well, it also means God's land. No, the literal translation is Sarah's land. Who is Sarah? Well, Sarah's a Jewish name that means princess. And of course the Jews are from Israel. So does it mean princess land? Is this like, makes me think of pink unicorns and rainbow spirals around their horn. Princess land. That's Israel. It's not God's land. Not in the literal translation. They've said that later on that's what they meant it to mean. But that's not what they said. Elizabeth means the hand of God. So why not call it Elizabeth's land? No, they've called it Sarah's land. Princess land. And who is Sarah? Did they just make that up, just like the people from Denmark made up Dan? Or at least we believe they did. Perhaps there really was a Dan. Or was there really a Sarah that existed beforehand? Luckily, happily for me, I've got a Sarah in my book, so I'm going to put that in there. But that's an interesting thing that not everyone knows about. They don't know that Israel literally means Sarah's land. So there you go. Alright, so that's it for me. Bye bye.